A millionaire CEO took the nanny to a company gala, but what she did shocked everyone. Before we begin, tell us in the comments what city you are watching from, and don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. Lillian was helping Leo with a puzzle in her new job as a nanny when a cold voice broke the moment. She looked up and saw Oliver Blackwell standing at the living room door, his posture stiff, his expression firm. "I need to talk to you alone," he said. Lillian looked up, still holding a giraffe-shaped puzzle piece. "Is something wrong with Leo?" she asked. "No, it's about tonight. You're coming with me to the company party," Oliver replied. She blinked, confused. "Sorry, what?" Oliver crossed his arms. "You're going with me to the gala. Wear something appropriate." Lillian stood up quickly, still trying to understand what he had just said. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell, but I was hired as a nanny, not to attend social events. Tonight, you'll be both. The person who was supposed to go cancelled last minute. I need someone. You're here." "Problem solved," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "That's not in the contract." "It is now," he replied, turning on his heel as if the matter was closed. "Hold on," Lillian followed him into the hallway. "You really think you can just call me up like you're ordering a pizza?" Oliver turned slowly, his face unreadable. "I pay well. I've already arranged someone to take care of Leo tonight, and I hired a stylist for you. Dress, hair, everything." Lillian crossed her arms, not backing down. "Something wrong with my hair?" He took a deep breath, staying calm. "What's already nice can be even better." She scoffed. "Arrogant. Be ready by 8 p.m. Don't be late," he said, and left. Lillian stood alone in the hallway, heart racing, eyes on the door that had just closed. She walked back to the living room, where Leo was watching her curiously, holding a puzzle piece. "You're going out with Dad?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "Looks like it, buddy. But what about our dinosaur? He'll have to wait. Tonight, I'll be kind of like a princess," she said. Leo smiled, not really understanding. Lillian sat back down on the rug, trying to act calm, but inside she was burning up. Oliver Blackwell thought he could control everything and everyone, and maybe he could, but she wasn't going to just follow orders. If she was going to that dinner, it would be on her terms to show him and the world that she was more than just a nanny with a messy resume and an unfinished degree. At 7:05 p.m., the stylist arrived. She was a short, cheerful woman named Grace, who walked in like she was on a secret mission, carrying a rack full of red carpet-worthy dresses. "Miss Lillian, let's bring out your beauty." "I love working with raw, authentic material," Grace said. "Raw material?" Lillian raised an eyebrow. "In a good way, dear. You're beautiful. You just need a little help," Grace replied. With some hesitation, Lillian let Grace take over. The makeover included soft makeup, a simple updo with loose waves falling on her shoulders, and a flowing red dress with a classy cut that highlighted her slim waist and well-shaped shoulders. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself, not because she looked like someone else, but because, for the first time in a long while, she saw something she hadn't allowed herself to see, her best version. At 7:58 p.m., she walked down the mansion stairs, calm and composed. Oliver was waiting in the foyer, adjusting his tie. When he saw her, he froze. He didn't say anything at first, which, coming from him, was almost poetic. His eyes took in the dress, the hair, the simple earrings. Then he looked into her eyes. There was surprise and maybe admiration. "You look acceptable," he said, clearing his throat. Lillian smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Not too bad for someone you hired as a nanny, huh?" Oliver ignored the comment and held out his arm. She took it, a bit sarcastically. "I'm going for me, just so you know," she said. "Fine. As long as you smile in the photos and don't spill wine on anyone, your reasons are your own, he replied. As the front door opened and the car waited outside, Lillian's stomach turned. It was just one night, a show, a performance, but something inside her said things would never be the same again. The ballroom at the Westwood Hotel sparkled with gold and crystal. It was the night of the annual Blackwell Holdings event, where numbers were discussed behind toasts, and appearances mattered just as much as contracts. Oliver walked in with Lillian at his side, and for a brief moment, the noise in the room seemed to stop. She was there in a striking red, light fabric dress that fit her naturally without overdoing it. Her bare shoulders showed perfect posture. Her hair, loose in soft waves, moved slightly in the air conditioning. There were no flashy jewels or heavy makeup, just pure elegance. The first to notice them was Meredith Kensington, Oliver's ex-fiancée, from one of Chicago's most traditional families. She was standing with two company executives when she slowly turned, as if sensing the moment. Her eyes froze on the red dress. "Oh," Meredith gave a sideways smile. "Did you bring a date tonight?" Oliver replied with a curt nod. Lillian stood firm at his side, a slight smile on her lips, not broad, not shy, just confident. The smile of someone who didn't need to prove anything. "Hello," Lillian extended her hand politely. "Lillian Cruz." Meredith shook her hand with two fingers, as if handling something delicate. "Charmed. We haven't met yet." Interesting color choice, her gaze moved over the dress. "Red is bold. Very noticeable." "That's right," Lillian smiled. "Being invisible never really appealed to me." Meredith forced a muffled laugh. "And do you work at Blackwell Holdings?" "Something like that," Lillian answered in a neutral tone. "Interesting," Meredith turned to the men around her. "Lately, the company has been adopting some rather creative inclusion policies." Oliver cleared his throat. "Meredith, if you're implying something." "Oh, of course not," she shot back, smiling. "I'm just saying it's admirable to see the company investing in alternative talent." Lillian stepped forward slightly, tilting her head just a bit. "You know, I really admire women like you." "Really?" Meredith seemed caught off guard. "Of course. It takes courage to wear a dress with so many layers and still walk as if you're floating, and keeping your balance in those heels. That's an art." Meredith couldn't quite tell if that was a compliment or a dig, and that was exactly the effect Lillian wanted. Oliver looked at her in surprise. That had been elegant, clever, and oddly fun. In the minutes that followed, many eyes turned their way as they walked toward the main table. Lillian kept her posture straight, greeting people with polite ease but no fuss. There was something about her, a mix of simplicity and confidence that was intriguing. "Are you all right?" Oliver asked under his breath as they settled at the table. "I'm great," she replied calmly, picking up her napkin. "By the way, you should smile more. Your face looks friendlier when it's not frozen." He raised an eyebrow. "You know you're talking to the company president, right? And you know you're talking to someone who isn't afraid of presidents, right?" Oliver didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth threatened a smile. Dinner was served in courses. Lillian stayed observant, watching the guests' movements. Every detail seemed rehearsed: laughter, toasts, the exchange of cards. It was corporate theater, and she surprisingly seemed to understand the script. By the second glass of sparkling wine, Meredith reappeared, this time with an elegant gentleman at her side. "Oh, dear," she said with a sparkle in her eye. "This is Mr. Beaumont, one of our French investors in green energy. He wanted to meet your guest." "Miss Cruz," the man extended his hand. "A pleasure. We were just saying how your presence has been notable." Lillian shook his hand firmly. "Very kind. It's a pleasure as well." "Do you work in development?" she asked. Oliver opened his mouth to correct him, but Lillian was quicker. "I've been following some of the company's social projects, especially those focused on accessibility." I believe technology is only progress if it includes people, not excludes them. Beaumont looked at her with genuine interest. Very well put. Meredith pursed her lips slightly. William smiled. In Paris, for example, there are community solar energy models that don't just supply power but also train local residents to manage the systems. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Lumiere project data. Beaumont looked visibly impressed. Yes, of course. It's one of our pilot projects. I think it's fascinating. I read last quarter's report. The impact curve is promising, Lillian added. Oliver watched her, surprised. He had no idea she read reports. Miss Cruz, Beaumont said, would you be open to scheduling a meeting? I'd be curious to hear your ideas. Lillian nodded, still smiling. I'd be happy to. When he walked away, Meredith stayed silent for a few seconds. Wow, she finally said. You really are full of surprises. You learn fast when you pay attention, Lillian said. And I pay close attention. Meredith forced a smile and stepped back, disappearing into the crowd. Oliver turned to Lillian, still processing what he had just seen. Where did you learn about community energy? I haven't been a nanny my whole life, Mr. Blackwell. I had plans before I had to reinvent myself. Reinvent? Surviving takes creativity, she replied. He stayed quiet for a few seconds. You made a good impression. I'm glad. I'm not here to make a bad one. Beaumont actually thought you were an executive. Maybe one day I will be. Who knows? Oliver held his wine glass, watching her carefully. What else do you know that you haven't shared? She looked at him with a spark in her eyes. That you'll have to find out. The morning after the event, Oliver Blackwell couldn't focus on anything. The financial report from the Seattle branch was ignored. A call from the legal director was postponed. Even his usual strong black coffee tasted off. All because of a woman in a red dress who was supposed to be just his son's nanny. Lillian had disrupted the smooth, predictable world he took so much pride in managing. He found her in the backyard, sitting with Leo under a tree, drawing dinosaurs with colored chalk. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. She wore a loose blouse and jeans, but her presence was just like the night before, steady, confident, focused. We need to talk, Oliver said, cutting into the moment like a fire alarm. Lillian stood up slowly. Is this about the dinner? It's about the reaction to the dinner. He glanced at Leo. Can you give us a minute, champ? Leo pouted but ran inside with a handful of chalk. What is it? Lillian crossed her arms. Last night, you made quite an impression, a positive one. All the investors were talking. Some even thought you were a new executive. It helped the company's image and mine, too. She raised an eyebrow. Are you thanking me? Not exactly. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm offering something, a deal that you keep pretending to be my girlfriend for the next 2 months. Lillian let out a short laugh. You're kidding. I'm serious. We've got a lot of important business and social events coming up. My reputation and the company's would benefit if I were seen with someone like you. Someone like me. Smart, well-spoken, and already part of the act, by the way, she said. She looked at him for a few seconds. And what's in it for me? A generous bonus. And if you want, we can update your contract with new terms. So, I'd have to dress like a magazine model, walk next to you smiling, and stay quiet when the rich folks in your world start talking nonsense. You're free to respond as long as it's with class. All right. She stepped closer. Here are my conditions. First, full autonomy with Leo. I take care of him my way. Second, I dress how I want, whether it's for a party or coffee in the park. Third, no orders outside of what we agree on. And fourth, I get to decide when the act ends. If I feel it's time to stop before 2 months are up, that's it. No debate. Oliver hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Deal. Great. She held out her hand. We have ourselves a fake agreement. He shook it, and in that quick touch, something unspoken passed between them. In the weeks that followed, Lillian's presence in Oliver's life grew stronger, not just at business events. She was there when Leo refused to eat his vegetables, when the neighbor's dog got into the yard, even when the house alarm went off by mistake at 4 in the morning. Oliver found out Lillian made up songs on the spot to get Leo to brush his teeth, that she danced around the kitchen when she thought no one was watching, that she read company reports just out of curiosity and left notes with suggestions that, to his surprise, actually made sense. You know, this solves a problem our team hasn't been able to fix in 3 months, he said one evening, holding one of her notes. It just takes a little common sense, she replied, sipping tea with bare feet up on the couch. You all live in such a bubble, you forget how regular people think. Did you just call me out of touch politely? Thanks, I think. They looked at each other for a moment, then laughed like old friends, which they clearly weren't yet. The agreement between them included dinners, business lunches, magazine photo shoots, and even a yacht trip with European shareholders. Lillian always dressed elegantly in her own way and stood out with her light and sharp sense of humor. She never tried to fit into that world, and that's exactly what made her shine in it. Your girlfriend is fascinating, one of the investors said during a dinner. Oliver simply nodded, not sure how to respond. Later that night, while driving back with Lillian in the passenger seat, he said, You got a lot of compliments. That's because I know when to smile and when to throw in a joke. The trick is making a provocation look like charm. You like to provoke, and you like to control, so we're even, he said. But the real impact of Lillian's presence wasn't at the events. It was at home. Leo started to change. He used to be shy and quiet, but now he talked more, smiled more. He asked questions, drew non-stop, and every morning he waited for Lillian with excitement. One evening, Oliver came home early and found the two of them under a blanket, watching cartoons with popcorn scattered across the couch. Leo was asleep, his head resting on her lap. Oliver stood still, watching. Lillian made a quiet gesture, asking him not to wake the boy. He walked over and, almost without thinking, sat down beside her. They stayed there in silence for a few minutes, sharing the calm breath of a home finally at peace. He's a lot happier, Oliver said softly. He just needed real attention, time, patience, and someone who isn't always watching the clock, Lillian replied. Am I that someone who's always watching the clock? I didn't say that. She smiled. But if you want a tip, try learning the names of his toys. Oliver looked at the dinosaur figure in his son's hands. That one's Green Dino. He's Theo, and he's blue, she whispered, laughing. Looks like I have a lot to learn. At least you admit it. The next morning, Leo was drawing on the porch while Oliver read the newspaper. Lillian was in the kitchen making pancakes. Daddy, huh? Can Lillian be my new mom? Leo asked. Oliver almost dropped his coffee cup. What? Leo, with the most serious expression in the world, pointed to the drawing he had made, him, Lillian, and Oliver holding hands with a smiling dog next to them. She tells me stories. She gives me baths without complaining. She makes me laugh, and she understands me, just like Mommy did. Oliver looked at the drawing, then at his son. That's not quite that simple, Leo. But it would be nice, right? Oliver didn't know what to say. He just gently ruffled the boy's hair. Lillian appeared at the door with a spatula in her hand. What's going on? Nothing, Oliver stood up. Leo's just imagining things. She noticed his expression but didn't push. Instead, she served breakfast with a calm smile. Imagination is one of the best things a child can have. Oliver didn't reply, but when he looked at the drawing again on the porch, he realized the boy wasn't the only one imagining things. He was, too. That night, Oliver sat alone in his office, looking through photos from recent events. In every one of them, Lillian was at his side, smiling, talking, sometimes looking at him with that mix of challenge and sweetness he still couldn't quite figure out. The plan was to pretend, but it was getting harder and harder to remember what was pretend and what was real. The sky that Monday morning was overcast, like the weather knew something important was about to happen. Oliver was walking quickly through the halls of Blackwell Holdings, phone pressed to his ear, nerves on edge. "He has appendicitis today," Oliver's voice came out somewhere between shock and panic. On the other end, his assistant tried to calm him. "Yes, sir. David is already at the hospital, but unfortunately, he won't be able to attend the Horizon Project presentation to the International Investor Board." Oliver hung up without replying. The meeting was in 1 hour, and the Horizon Project, a bold plan for urban restructuring with a social focus, was a risky bet. It needed more than just numbers, it needed meaning. And now, without David, their lead presenter, he had no spokesperson. He stepped into his office, unsure of what to do, and took a deep breath. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. "Is everything okay?" It was Lillian, carrying a folder with Leo's drawings from the night before. "No," Oliver replied plainly. "Our lead executive for Horizon is out, and this presentation could decide a $20 million investment." Lillian was silent for a moment. Then she placed the drawings on the desk, brushed her hair back, and said, "I can help. This isn't one of those moments where you offer to make tea, is it?" "No," she smiled. "But if you want, I can do that, too. What I'm saying is, you showed me the reports. We've talked about this project many times, and what it's missing is exactly what I can offer: humanity." She said it simply. "The numbers are good, but the story behind them needs to be told by someone who understands people." Oliver watched her for a few seconds. "You don't have experience giving presentations. And you don't have many options, remember?" He smiled, one of those involuntary smiles that slip out before logic can stop them. Half an hour later, the investors began entering the room, big names, pressed ties, controlled smiles. These were the sharpest eyes in the sustainable urban development field. Oliver gave the introduction, brief and to the point. Then he handed the microphone to Lillian. She walked to the front of the room with the ease of someone who did it every day. She wore a beige blazer over a simple white blouse, and her hair was loose on her shoulders. "Good morning," she began. "My name is Lillian Cruz. I'm not an engineer, an architect, or an economist, but I know exactly what it's like to grow up in a neighborhood where cracked sidewalks teach you to jump over holes before you even learn to read." The investors exchanged glances. This wasn't what they expected. The Horizon Project aims to turn forgotten neighborhoods into real communities with street lighting, green spaces, and accessibility, she continued. But more than that, it aims to bring dignity. She clicked the remote, and a slide appeared showing a rundown park. "This place was the backyard of my childhood, where mothers took turns chasing away rats, where kids ran around in worn-out sandals but smiled like they owned the world. Today, it's abandoned. And that's why Horizon matters, because it brings back possibilities, because it plants seeds in neglected ground." Oliver watched from the side of the room, silent, fascinated. She continued, "The project isn't just about renovating buildings. It's about building bridges between people and their rights, between children and their opportunities, and between companies and their real impact on society." At the end of the presentation, there was a brief silence. Then the French investor, the same one who had met Lillian at the party, raised his hand. "Miss Cruz, do you speak with such passion because you live this?" "Yes," she answered firmly. "And that's why I believe numbers alone don't change reality, but people do." The room applauded. Oliver had never seen that happen in such a formal meeting. When it was over and the investors left, talking among themselves excitedly, Lillian turned to Oliver. "I think it worked. He just looked at her for a few seconds. You didn't just save this presentation, you transformed it. I just told a real story. People miss that, you know. Miss you? No, she smiled. The truth. Oliver was quiet for a few seconds, then murmured, "Thank you. Always happy to help, as long as it's part of the deal, of course." They both laughed, and the mood between them grew lighter, almost warm. Later that same day, already at home, Lillian was picking up Leo's toys when she got an email titled, "Official Social Collaboration Proposal, Vita Plano Foundation." She clicked on it. It was an invitation to be the national spokesperson for a new education and community development program based in another city, Boston. The project was serious, well-structured, with support from universities and companies. The email praised her presentation earlier and said she'd been recommended by one of the investors present. Lillian sat in silence for a while. On the screen, the terms were clear: competitive salary, housing, visibility, and purpose, a lot of purpose. She closed the laptop slowly. Later that night, sitting with Leo on the sofa, he looked at her with sleepy eyes. "Did you save Daddy's job today?" "Maybe just a little bit." "Are you going to live here forever?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know, champ. If you go away, what will happen to us?" She hugged him tightly, feeling her heart ache. "I don't know yet, but I promise nothing really important will change." Leo fell asleep in her arms, and Lillian stayed there, looking out the window while the city lights shone outside, like opportunities that were finally starting to appear. The day seemed just like any other at Blackwell Holdings, but up on that glass-walled 8th floor, with the air conditioner humming in the background, something had started to change. Oliver was sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing it. The numbers in front of him made sense, but they no longer sparked the excitement they once did. All he could think about was Lillian, or rather, what she had done, not just for the company, but for Leo, for him, and for herself. She walked into the room naturally, holding a mug of tea and a folder full of notes. No high heels, no tailored suit, just a simple light dress and white sneakers. Still, she carried a confidence he quietly admired. "Were you waiting for me?" she asked casually. "Technically, yes." Oliver pointed to the folder. "I need your opinion on this new social project. The board wants to expand into the countryside, and I'd like to hear what you think." She sat down without hesitation. "Okay, where's the catch?" "There is no catch," he said, half smiling. "Just genuine curiosity. That's rare coming from you." "I'm trying to get better. And I'm here to witness it," she smiled. They spent nearly an hour going through the documents, discussing ideas, and exploring possibilities. The mood between them was easy, but there was something else in the air, something unspoken but felt with every glance they shared. During a quiet pause, Oliver turned his eyes toward the window. "Do you think some people are just born to carry the weight of the world?" Lillian stopped flipping through the pages. "No, I think some people are raised that way, and others learn because life gives them no choice. My father was like that," Oliver said softly. "I grew up hearing that weakness wasn't an option, that every mistake meant failure. From a young age, everything was about goals, performance, perfection. I couldn't even mess up blowing out birthday candles." "That sounds suffocating." "It was," he sighed. "I never got to choose what I wanted to be, only what I was supposed to be. And even now, sometimes I find myself trying to please someone who's no longer around." Lillian looked at him gently. For the first time, he didn't seem like the cold, untouchable CEO everyone knew. He looked like a man tired of carrying his armor. "And your mom?" she asked. "She died when I was 10. She was different, kind, patient. When she was gone, everything got tougher." She looked down, moved. After a moment, she said, "I lost my mom, too. More recently. I had to give up my scholarship when she got sick. I took care of her until the end. You had a scholarship? Yes, psychology, State University. I was going to be the first in my family to graduate, but when the illness came, my sister was still little. Someone had to hold everything together. You took all that on by yourself? I did. I worked as a cashier, waitress, nanny. I did whatever I could, and I never looked back. Oliver stayed silent for a moment, the kind of silence that comes from understanding. You're stronger than you look, and you're more fragile than you let on. She replied softly. They looked at each other, this time with no walls, no jokes, no games. The connection between them, built through looks and sarcasm, now had deeper roots, shared pain, resilience. The fact that, even though they came from different worlds, they both carried scars that shaped every step they took. Outside that bubble of honesty, someone else was watching with different eyes. Meredith Kensington had been told by an assistant that Oliver's girlfriend had shown up at an official company event, and not just shown up, she spoke on behalf of the board and impressed investors. The discomfort was growing. Who is this woman? She asked her personal team. We're trying to gather more information. Her full name is Lillian Cruz. We have a previous address, records of her working as a nanny, caregiver, and store clerk, but very little in the official files. No college degree, just an old enrollment, State University, psychology. Dropped out a few years ago. No diploma. Meredith folded her fingers together, thinking. I want more. Everything you can find, records, photos, old files, anything that could expose her. You think she's pretending? I'm not sure. But I do know when someone is somewhere they don't belong. And if we don't find anything damaging, then we create a story. Sometimes, just planting the doubt is enough. The rest, society will take care of. Meredith stood and walked to the window of her penthouse. From up there, everything looked under control, just like it always had. But something about Lillian threw her off. She was charismatic, genuine, and worse, she was starting to win people over, including Oliver. Meredith wasn't going to be replaced, especially not by someone who, in her view, didn't even belong in the room. At the office, Oliver and Lillian were saying goodbye after a long day. He was carrying a folder, and she had a notebook filled with handwritten notes. Going to see Leo now? He asked, opening the elevator door. Yes, she said. He wants to show me a chalk masterpiece. Get ready, he smiled. He mixed dinosaurs with rockets. Creativity's alive and well in that house. They stepped into the elevator together. The comfortable silence between them was a clear contrast to the early days of their working relationship. Now, it wasn't strange to share the space. But a few floors from the lobby, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered. Was that planned? Lillian asked, half laughing, half suspicious. Unfortunately, no. Oliver pressed the emergency button. It's happened before, but never with me inside. Perfect. My debut in corporate events and stuck elevators. He tried to contact maintenance, but there was no signal. The generator had also failed. Lillian leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. Looks like we'll be here for a while. At least the air conditioning's working, and there's nothing to eat. Terrible combo. You're hungry? I'm always hungry after 5. Survival rule from someone who once lived on 1 pack of crackers a day. Oliver looked at her again with that mix of curiosity and admiration. You talk about things like that with such ease. Because if I don't laugh, I cry. And crying won't help us get out of the elevator. He chuckled, more relaxed now. You know, I used to think women like you only existed in movies. And I used to think men like you only existed in tax reports, cold, arrogant, and soulless. Your words, not mine. They both laughed. But you know something, Oliver, she said, looking up at the ceiling. Sometimes what we think we know isn't even half the story. Are you talking about me? About me, too. We protect ourselves so much, build walls, hide behind titles, behind sarcasm, and we miss what's real. He didn't say anything. Are you afraid? He asked. Of the elevator? No. Of other things, maybe. Like what? Like letting myself feel something in a place where I was only supposed to work. He nodded slowly. I get that. More than you might think. Their eyes met. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of everything they hadn't yet found the words to say. In that metal box, stuck between floors, there was more truth than in many of those gala dinners. 30 minutes later, the elevator started moving again. When they stepped out, they walked in silence to the parking lot. Thanks for the talk and for the company in captivity, he said. It was more fun than I expected, she replied. He hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something else, but he just nodded. Good night, Lillian. Good night, Oliver. They each went their own way. Neither of them knew that, across the city, Meredith Kensington already had a file on Lillian spread across her desk and a plan in mind. The dining room at Luxor in the heart of Manhattan was carefully designed to impress. A piano played softly in the background. Silverware sparkled under the warm chandelier light. Blackwell Holdings executives toasted with international investors over the close of a new round of deals. Oliver was there, elegant, tense. He wasn't a fan of social events, but he knew this night mattered. And somehow, he wished Lillian were there with him. But this time, she hadn't come. He hadn't invited her. He was still processing everything they'd been through, the elevator, the conversations, and all the things they hadn't said. That's when Meredith appeared, wearing a flawless navy blue dress and the same confident sparkle in her eyes. She approached easily and took the seat beside one of the key British investors. Mr. Wilkins, have you met Oliver's companion? Meredith said casually, swirling her glass. Oh, yes, the man replied. The young woman who presented the Horizon project. Very sharp. I was impressed. Meredith smiled. She is impressive, isn't she? And to think she's actually his son's nanny. The words hit the center of the table like lightning. A few people exchanged glances. One waiter froze for a second before continuing to pour the wine. Oliver stared at Meredith, stunned. She went on, as if commenting on the weather. Don't get me wrong, I admire the boldness. A nanny at the heart of strategic decision-making. It's modern, really. Though personally, I prefer professionals with proper qualifications. Meredith, Oliver started, but his voice faltered. Wilkins cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. She seemed well prepared to me, no matter what her current job title is. Of course, Meredith smiled. But maybe the board deserves to know who's really influencing the company's decisions, don't you think? The words hung in the air. And that was exactly when Lillian appeared. She had come to drop off a signed document at Oliver's assistant's request. She wore a simple, elegant dress, nothing flashy, but enough to make her stand out. When she walked in and saw all the eyes on her and Oliver's pale expression, she felt it. Something was wrong. Oh, what a coincidence, Meredith said loudly. We were just talking about you. Lillian stopped, steady. I hope it was something useful. It always is, Meredith replied. We were just explaining to the investors that you're actually little Leo's nanny. The room fell silent. Lillian took a deep breath. She didn't shrink back. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at each of their faces. Yes, I'm a nanny, and very proud of it, she said firmly. And before that, I was a cashier, a clerk, a waitress, a caregiver, a cleaner. But no matter the job, I always did my best. She turned to Oliver, waiting for him to say something, a gesture, a word, a sign of support. But he stayed silent, frozen, like he'd been blindsided and couldn't find the strength to respond. "I see," Lillian said, her throat tight. "Thank you for reminding me where I came from, and especially where I don't want to stay." She turned and walked out, no tears, no drama, just a dignity that left the room quiet for long seconds. Hours later, Oliver was sitting in his office, dinner long over, his mind racing. Why didn't he say anything? Why had he stayed silent when it mattered most? He closed his eyes, trying to find an answer that didn't sound like an excuse. That's when he noticed a craft paper folder with colored tabs on the side table. Project Portfolio, Lillian Cruz, the cover read. He opened it. Inside were sketches, ideas, maps, charts, social action plans, community education projects, neighborhood redevelopment proposals, and programs to support single mothers, all drawn by hand, with detail, with passion, old dates, things she had dreamed up before taking her first nanny job. Oliver turned each page with a heavy heart. She was so much more than he had imagined and so much more than the world had let her show. He felt ashamed for that night, for his silence, for being too slow. The next morning, the story had already spread further. Business blogs speculated about the nanny influencing decisions at Blackwell. Some called her bold, others questioned the company's professionalism. On social media, opinions were split, but most people praised Lillian's stance. A short video of her words at the restaurant, filmed by someone there, had already racked up thousands of views. The board was on alert. "We need to control this narrative," said the communications director. "How?" Oliver asked. "By showing that the company values talent, that regardless of someone's background, we recognize their potential." Oliver stood up. "No, we need to do more than that. I need to do more than that." That same day, Lillian was packing her small suitcase in the employee apartment. She had written a thank you letter to the HR team, another for Leo, full of drawings and memories, and a third, shorter one for Oliver. "Thank you for believing, even if only for a little while. I don't regret what I experienced, but I need to move on. Good luck with Blackwell, and take good care of Leo. He deserves the world." She was about to close the door when she heard knocking. It was Oliver. He looked different, tired, human. "You really caught me off guard yesterday," he said after a moment. "Welcome to the club," she replied, crossing her arms. "I should have said something. I know, I was in shock, but that's no excuse." She looked at him steadily. "No, it's not." He pulled the portfolio folder from his bag and held it out to her. "You should be leading a team, not picking up scattered toys." "I like the scattered toys. And I like UEADU, she said. He said plainly, "I like an intelligent, brave woman who stood up to a room full of powerful people with her head held high and who even made me laugh when the elevator broke. That's what matters to me, Lillian, not what other people think." She took a deep breath. "You took too long to figure that out." "But I did figure it out, and I'm here now." "You know what's funny," she said, picking up her suitcase. "You're telling me all this just when I got a job offer in Boston, a social project, one I helped inspire without even meaning to." Oliver looked at her. "Are you going to say yes?" "I don't know yet." "What do I have to do to make you stay?" She looked him in the eyes. "Let me go if that's what needs to happen." And in that moment, he understood that love, true love, doesn't hold on, it lets go. Oliver wasn't exactly sure what he was looking for when he got in his car that morning and drove to the address Lillian had left in the company's records. But something in his chest told him he needed to see her, not just to apologize, but to understand who she really was. And maybe, for the first time, to understand who he really was. The scenery slowly began to change. The tall buildings gave way to simpler ones, small, family-owned stores and streets where barefoot kids ran along the sidewalks. It was a modest neighborhood, but full of life, colors, voices, smells, and stories. He parked the car and took a look around, unhurried. A group of kids played near a community school. A few women chatted in front of a bakery, and around the corner, he saw a modest building painted light blue with a banner hanging over the entrance. LS Viva Community Center. There, he saw a mural covered with children's drawings, thank you notes, and photos taped to the wall. In many of them, Lillian was smiling with other women and children, holding signs with phrases like, "Education changes lives," and, "Together we're stronger." He walked up to the entrance and was greeted by an older woman with gray hair wearing a t-shirt with the center's logo. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked kindly. "Yes, I'm looking for Lillian Cruz," he said, feeling almost embarrassed. "Oh, Lillian." The woman's eyes lit up. "She helped start this place. I know she doesn't live here anymore, but I wanted to understand more about what she did." The woman invited him inside. For nearly an hour, Oliver spoke with local residents, volunteers, and Lillian's former co-workers. He heard how she had set up tutoring programs, organized fundraising sales to buy medicine, and helped single mothers with emotional and legal support. She had done all of it with no money, just determination and compassion. She taught math in the mornings, took care of the elderly in the afternoons, and still found time to bake bread to sell at night, said one neighbor. And she never stopped smiling. One time, the school had a gas leak. No one knew what to do. She's the one who called the fire department and led the evacuation. You'd never think she was just in her 20s, said another. Each story he heard was like a light turning on in Oliver's mind. He felt ashamed for reducing her to a role, a label, and at the same time deeply moved by discovering a woman so whole, so much more than he had ever imagined. Before leaving, he asked to visit the house where she had lived with her sister. They took him to a small 2-story home. Lillian's sister, Clara, was sitting on the porch, studying with a notebook on her lap. She had the same bright eyes as her sister. "You must be Oliver," she said, straight to the point. He nodded, a bit surprised. "She talked about me." "She did, a lot. But not all of it was praise." "I figured," he replied with a half-smile. "She cared about you, and that's what hurt the most, because she didn't expect you to protect her from the world. She just hoped you wouldn't be part of it when it turned against her." Oliver said nothing. "I made a lot of mistakes with her." "We can tell," Clara said, closing her notebook and standing up. "But if you came all the way out here, maybe there's still a chance to fix things." Back in the city, Oliver got home late in the afternoon. The first thing he saw was Leo drawing alone in the living room. The boy looked up at him with big eyes and asked simply, "Dad, where's Lillian?" Oliver knelt beside his son. "She had to go, buddy." "But why?" "I like her. She told me funny bedtime stories, and she taught me how to make a heart with my hands." He showed the gesture, his eyes welling up. Oliver hugged him. "I know, Leo. I like her, too." "Then go get her," the boy said with total honesty. His father smiled, eyes full. Kids know things. 2 days later, Lillian received an unexpected message. Oliver was asking her to meet for coffee at the park where they used to take Leo in the evenings. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to see him again. Another part still hurt, humiliated, disappointed, but curiosity and her heart spoke louder. She arrived on time, wearing jeans, a simple blouse, and her hair in a loose bun. When she saw him sitting on the bench with a box in his lap, she took a deep breath. "I brought an apple pie from your favorite bakery," he said, standing up. "So, you've been digging into my life. Let's just say I went looking for answers where I should have from the start." She sat down, keeping a bit of distance. "What do you want, Oliver?" He looked at her seriously. "I want to say I'm sorry for staying silent, for judging you, for treating you like less when you were more. Took you long enough. I know, but I'm here now, and I want to show you something." He handed her a slim folder. Inside was an official document, a project approved by Blackwell's board, an expansion proposal for the Leviva Center, fully funded by the company. I took your portfolio to the board. I showed them who you are and what you can do, he said. Not only did they approve it, they wanted you to lead it. Lillian looked at the papers, stunned. Is this for real? Completely. You'll be the director of the new social impact program, full independence, your own team, a brand new office in New York, anywhere you want. She took a deep breath. This changes a lot of things. I hope it does, but it doesn't change what happened between us. Oliver lowered his eyes. I know, but I also know that you're the only person I want to share all of this with. Work, life, fears, and Leo misses you every day. She fought back the emotion. I don't trust you anymore, Oliver. He nodded quietly. But I want to trust you again, she said finally. That's up to you. His eyes lit up with hope. Then let me prove it. One day at a time. Starting now. Starting now. She looked at his hand for a second, then, with a slight smile, she took it. Oliver's office was quiet that morning. The large windows let in the natural light, and the city skyline looked farther away than usual. On the desk was a single light brown envelope marked with the name Lillian Cruz. He ran his fingers over the surface of the paper, hesitant. He had written that offer with help from legal, HR, and even marketing, but it was more than just a job offer. It was a genuine attempt to rebuild something, to fix what he could no longer ignore. With a deep breath, he picked up his phone and sent the message, I need to talk to you today. No games. At the agreed time, Lillian entered the Blackwell building, this time as a guest. She wore a white button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up and dark jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she carried a leather folder under her arm. Upstairs, the receptionist greeted her with a hesitant smile. Everyone knew who she was now, and everyone was talking. Oliver stood waiting. When she walked in, he didn't smile or move too close. He respected her space. Thanks for coming. Nice to hear you say, please, she replied, sitting with a steady posture. You asked me to change. I'm trying, he said as he sat down, too. Here's the offer. I'd like you to read it before saying anything. She opened the envelope and read carefully, silently, Social Impact Coordinator, Blackwell Holdings. Full-time contract, competitive salary, full project autonomy, freedom to choose her team, budget guaranteed. She looked up. Looks good, but I've learned that in this company, what looks good can be just for show. Not this time. It's real. Then here are my terms. She pulled out a printed sheet from her folder. I want complete freedom to define the areas of work, no vetoes from the board. My team will be chosen entirely by me, no one sent in to keep an eye on things. Done. Social reports won't become marketing material. I want real action, not just pretty pictures for social media. I agree. And our relationship will be strictly professional, no lunches, no dinners, no meetings or comments outside the work environment. Oliver nodded. I understand, and I accept. Good. In that case, we can begin. She extended her hand. He shook it firmly. An invisible agreement of respect had just been sealed. Lillian was met with curious looks and whispers during her first few days. Some watched with admiration, others with doubt, but she wasn't fazed. She started at the ground level, meetings with employees from every department, active listening, and visits to areas of the company that had long been overlooked. She built her team with people who had also been underestimated. A brilliant intern from a Latin background, a senior analyst with a passion for inclusion, and a former public school teacher with experience in community programs. In the following weeks, Lillian led internal workshops on empathy in the workplace, launched a scholarship program for at-risk youth, and reopened partnerships with nonprofits focused on education and health. The impact was immediate. Headlines started appearing on business news sites. Blackwell Holdings reinvents its social responsibility with new coordinator. From nanny to leader, Lillian Cruz's rise inspires change in the corporate world. Oliver watched everything from a distance. He didn't interfere, but now and then he'd walk past the new department and see her laughing with the team, coordinating things with passion. And in that smile, there was something he recognized and missed. One afternoon, while she was planning a visit to a project in another neighborhood, Lillian was surprised by a note left on her desk. "If you have time, I'd like to go with you, just as an observer. No agenda. Oliver." She read it twice without reacting. She thought about refusing, but part of her wanted him to see, not her, but what she did. The next day, he was there at the agreed time, wearing dark jeans, sneakers, and an open-collar shirt. No security, no assistant. They went together to the community where Lillian had launched her new project, helping women who were heads of households learn entrepreneurial skills. "They're learning to make handmade soaps, candles, bread," Lillian explained. "Later, they'll sell them at a small market we're setting up with microloans from the company." Oliver listened carefully. "This is more than a program. It's independence." "Exactly. When a woman has her own income, the whole home changes. It changes her children's future." "You should be in my entire board's place," he said, half joking, half admiring. She smiled but didn't reply. At the end of the day, one of the women in the program, Mrs. Rosa, came over to them. "So, you're her boss?" "I'm her manager," Oliver said. "Then make sure you value this young woman. She's gold. She wasn't born rich, but she was born with a strength not many have." Oliver nodded, moved. "You're absolutely right." Lillian heard from a distance, quietly. Back at the company, the positive reports began to pile up. Blackwell's reputation improved significantly, but what was truly impressive wasn't just the better public image. It was the personal stories from people whose lives had changed, real people, real stories. Oliver called a board meeting to share the results. "In 3 months, we've increased perceived institutional value by 18%. We've improved internal talent retention by 12%, and we've earned genuine credibility." He looked at Lillian, seated among the senior leaders. "And all of this is thanks to her." Some directors applauded. Others swallowed their pride, but they all knew this woman had changed the company. That night, Lillian was the last to leave the building. She was walking through the empty halls when she heard footsteps. "Still working?" It was Oliver, just finishing up the last reports for next week's presentation. "Can I walk you to the elevator?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They walked in silence. Inside the elevator, he pressed the ground floor button and, looking at the panel, said, "I know you said you wanted to keep this professional, and I respect that, but I need to thank you, not just for what you did for the company, but for what you did for me." She glanced at him, surprised. "Before you, I thought I was strong because I didn't get involved. Now I see that real courage is opening up, facing what hurts. You showed me that with your honesty, with your work, with the way you are." She lowered her eyes. "Oliver, I don't want to pressure you. I just wanted you to know." The door opened. She walked toward the exit, and he followed her to the sidewalk. "Thank you for not trying to convince me," she said. "That alone makes all the difference." He smiled. "I'm learning from the best." "Then keep learning. Only if you stay here." "For now, I am." And in that moment, with no vows or promises, something was starting again between them, slowly, at the right pace, gradually, without formal plans or rules. Lillian started going back to Oliver's house often. The reason was always the same, Leo. She said it was just because she missed him, and maybe that was true. But the truth was, those visits became part of their routine, a new routine that no one dared to question. Every afternoon after work, she showed up, carrying a bag with colorful books, paper for folding crafts, and sometimes cookies she'd baked herself. "Leo," she shouted, hugging him as he ran to the door. "Aunt Lillian," he shouted, wrapping his arms around her legs. She laughed, knelt down, and hugged him. "Hey there, my astronaut. Ready for another space adventure?" When the sky grew dark, Lillian would take the boy up to his room and put him to bed. She had her own special routine, brushing teeth, picking a bedtime story, and then a lullaby. Sometimes she made up the lyrics, other times, she sang an old tune her mother had taught her when she was little. Leo would fall asleep quickly, a smile on his face. Oliver, for his part, always watched from a distance. He never interrupted. He just observed and felt something in his chest he still didn't know how to name. That Friday, the house was busier than usual. Blackwell was hosting a special dinner with international partners, a smaller event, but an important one to strengthen relationships and introduce the company's new social initiatives. Lillian, as the impact coordinator, had been invited officially as part of the team. She arrived in a dark blue dress, elegant and modest, cinched at the waist with a thin belt. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore small earrings to complete the look, nothing flashy. When Oliver saw her, he was speechless for a moment. "Good evening," she said as she approached. "Is everything ready?" "It is now," he replied, offering his arm. "May I?" She hesitated, then took his arm. They walked in together. During dinner, Lillian was introduced to the international guests as the mind behind the initiatives that were reshaping both the image and the heart of Blackwell. She spoke clearly, with grace and ease, explaining how each project was built around the reality of the communities, how they included active listening, local autonomy, and long-term impact. The guests were visibly impressed. "It's rare to hear someone speak about business with such a human touch," one of the Spanish executives said. "Thank you," Lillian replied. But the credit also goes to the team and to a CEO who had the courage to listen. Oliver watched silently, captivated. After dinner, the guests began to say their goodbyes one by one. Soon, only a few directors remained, and they soon left as well. Lillian stayed on the balcony, enjoying the light evening breeze. Oliver walked up, holding 2 glasses. "Sparkling water with lemon," he said, handing one to her. "I figured you'd prefer that over wine." "You guessed right," she replied, taking the glass with a small smile. They stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the city below. "You were amazing tonight," he finally said. "I just did my job." "No, you brought to life what this company was always meant to be." She turned slightly to face him. "You know, Oliver, you seem different, too. In a good way, I hope. In a more genuine way, more approachable. And that's surprisingly comforting." He looked at her with a softness she hadn't seen in him before. "You helped me see what I'd been missing," he said quietly. "Not just here, but in life." She looked away. "Don't say that like that." "Why not?" "Because it's hard not to believe you when you say it in that voice." "Then believe me, Lillian. I'm in love with you." Silence. Cars passed in the distance, their sound muffled. The breeze was still gentle. Lillian looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of a lie, a trick. But all she saw was truth. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." He moved closer, taking his time. And when their faces were just inches apart, it was Lillian who closed the distance. The kiss was slow, sincere, full of discovery and relief, not rushed, not forced. It felt like they had finally found what they'd both been avoiding. When they pulled apart, she still had her eyes closed, as if wanting to hold on to that moment for just one more second. "That wasn't in our agreement," she murmured, smiling. "Then I think we need a new contract," he replied, resting his forehead gently against hers. The next morning, Leo was running around the living room with a wide grin. Oliver watched him, amused. All ready, astronaut? Yep. But what are we doing again? A special mission. Are you in? Always. They got into the car, and Leo held a colorful handmade envelope. You think she'll like it? He asked. I'm sure of it, Oliver said, starting the engine. In the trunk, there was a small gift wrapped in red paper. It was the start of a plan Oliver had been working on for days. A special weekend for Leo and Lillian, just for the three of them, finally together, no roles, no masks, just who they really were. In the central square of the neighborhood where Lillian had launched one of her first projects, a simple setup had been arranged: colorful tents, craft booths, cultural performances, and a small wooden stage surrounded by flowers. It was the first community day, an event organized by Lillian and her team to celebrate the progress of the social project supported by Blackwell. Children ran around wearing shirts that read, "My future starts here." Seniors sat in circles listening to stories, and women smiled as they sold handmade goods. It was a living picture of the change she had helped create. Oliver walked with Leo by his side. The boy was holding something behind his back, trying to look serious, but the sparkle in his eyes gave him away. Do you remember our plan, astronaut? Yes. When you give me the signal, I'll hand over the little box. But only when you say that part. That's right. Oliver smiled. And don't worry, it's going to be just fine. Leo nodded, then looked around, searching for Lillian. When he spotted her on stage, helping one of the organizers set up the microphones, he pointed and smiled. She looks really pretty today, Dad. She always has. I just took too long to see it. The event opened with simple presentations, testimonies from project participants, music, and heartfelt speeches. Lillian guided everything with calm and confidence, moving through the crowd, comforting the shy, encouraging the bold. When the microphone was passed to Oliver, the room went quiet. He stepped onto the stage with a serious expression, but his eyes were shining. Good afternoon, everyone, he began. Today, I'm not speaking as a CEO or a businessman. I'm speaking as someone who's been changed by this community, by this project, and by one person in particular. Lillian's eyes widened, and she stopped where she was. When I first met this woman, I was a very different person. I believed success meant control, that results came from the top down, and that emotions were just distractions. A few soft laughs spread through the audience. She came into my life unexpectedly, first as my son's nanny, then as someone who wasn't afraid to speak her mind, someone who stood up to me, challenged me, and changed me. He paused, swallowing hard. Lillian, you showed me that real leadership comes from the heart, that empathy isn't weakness, it's strength. That taking care of others is what really matters. He took a deep breath and looked at Leo, who got the signal. The boy walked up to the stage, holding a small blue box with a big smile. Dad, Leo said, handing him the box. Is it time? It is. Oliver knelt on the stage. The entire crowd went silent. Lillian Cruz, he opened the box, revealing a pair of simple, elegant rings. Would you change the rest of my life by saying yes? Lillian covered her mouth. Tears were already streaming down her cheeks. Her eyes were wide, and her breathing was short. Oliver, I love you, and I want to build a life with you, a real life with Leo, with our flaws, with everything we are and everything we could be. She started to laugh through the tears. This is absolutely unexpected. I know, but it's also absolutely real. You did all this. He motioned to the setup, the event, the stage. With help from the amazing team you built. And Leo knew. He rehearsed with me. What if I had said no? Then we'd have to come up with a very sad alternate ending, he replied, making the crowd laugh. She slowly stepped down the stairs, walking up to him on the stage. She stood in front of Oliver, still on one knee, and held out her hand. You're crazy, a little, and very stubborn. Definitely. And still, I say yes. The plaza erupted in applause. Leo jumped and shouted, she said yes, and ran over to hug them both. Oliver slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and she did the same. Then he stood and pulled her into a long, tight hug. The kiss that followed felt like the natural ending to that moment, light, real, filled with laughter and tears all at once. Meanwhile, across the city in a sleek, dimly lit apartment, Meredith was watching the live broadcast of the event with a drink in hand. Her phone slipped slightly from her fingers as she watched the footage of Oliver kneeling on stage. This can't be happening, she muttered, eyes fixed on the screen. In a last-ditch attempt to ruin the moment, she opened her laptop, pulled up an unfinished file with old documents and clippings about Lillian's past, and began preparing an anonymous post to stir up old controversies. But something happened. Before she could click publish, she saw the comments section of the live stream flood with messages. What a beautiful love story. Never seen Mr. Blackwell smile like that. This woman changed everything. So inspiring. We need more leaders like her. Meredith slammed the laptop shut. The damage wouldn't land anymore. Public opinion was on their side, and more importantly, so was Oliver. Back at the plaza, Leo ran through the booths with the flower crown he had made for my new mom. Lillian and Oliver walked hand in hand, being greeted by neighbors and team members. Was that all really real? She asked, eyes still wet. As real as the project you created, as real as everything I feel for you. So, we're engaged, officially, with plenty of witnesses. I have one condition already, she said. I want a simple ceremony with the community, with Leo up at the altar, with live music and food prepared by the women from our project. Done. Agreed. Signed. She laughed. Are you really willing to do all this? I'm willing to be with you, Lillian. The breeze blew gently once more, and the sky, now golden, seemed to bless this new chapter. 3 months passed since the proposal in the square. 3 months of simple planning, meetings with the community, and decisions guided more by the heart than by any protocol. Oliver and Lillian's wedding took place on a sunny Saturday in the same place where he had knelt down. But now, the square was transformed. Flower arches decorated the path among the trees. White chairs were lined up in front of a small stage, and soft music filled the air. Neighbors, co-workers, volunteers, and friends were all there, their eyes bright, their phones in hand, their smiles genuine. Leo walked in, carrying a small pillow with 2 custom-made rings. He looked so neat in his little suit, he could hardly stop smiling. Oliver waited at the altar in a dark blue suit, no tie, his hair gently tousled by the wind. When some children saw him, they whispered, "He looks nervous." And they were right. But all that tension disappeared when Lillian appeared. She walked slowly, wearing a simple, elegant dress with lace at the sleeves and a flowing hem. Her hair was pinned up with flowers from the community garden. Her eyes were full of tears, and when they met his, nothing else seemed to matter. Tears fell before a single word was spoken. The officiant, visibly moved, led the ceremony with great care. The vows were shared honestly and gently, and the kiss sealed not just a marriage, but the union of 2 worlds that had learned to understand each other and to heal. Married life wasn't a sudden change, but more like a natural continuation of what they were already building together. The social impact program, once limited to the city, started gaining national visibility. With Oliver and Lillian leading side by side, new centers were opened in other states, always respecting local culture and focusing on what people truly needed. Lillian organized the teams, led the training, and kept close watch over every pilot project. Her ability to listen, to care, and to transform was the driving force behind the program's success. Oliver, in turn, learned to step out of the office. He started visiting sites, joining community meetings, and sometimes even helped out himself, literally. During the building of a library in a small rural town, he was seen carrying bricks and drinking coffee from a metal mug alongside the workers. The photo went viral, and the image of the CEO with the tie began to be replaced by that of the man who learned to listen. Within the company, the change was even deeper. Lillian took on a new unofficial role, the bridge between the upper floors and the regular offices. It began with conversations in the cafeteria, then listening groups with employees, and soon she proposed a wellness committee that became part of the company's official structure. She launched mentoring programs for young talent, encouraged creative breaks, and brought in training that focused on the human side of leadership. Some executives frowned at first, but once they saw satisfaction and productivity numbers rise, they realized something was genuinely working. Oliver, now closer to everyone, was often seen walking the halls unhurried, listening to ideas, joining birthday gatherings, and having lunch at the interns' table. "That man has changed," the employees would say. But those who truly knew him understood he hadn't just changed, he had finally allowed himself to be who he had always wanted to be. Leo, now more confident and happier, lived a routine full of love. His parents were at school meetings, cheering in the stands at soccer games, and always there for bedtime, the moment he looked forward to the most. Lillian kept singing her made-up lullabies, and Oliver sat by the bed, just listening. "Will you sing to me tonight, too, Mommy?" Leo would ask. "Only if you promise me you'll dream about the stars." "I always dream about stars, but now I dream about you too." It was on an ordinary afternoon, during a meeting with the social impact team, that the invitation arrived, a golden envelope delivered by a discreet messenger. Inside was a letter signed by a National Committee for Sustainable Development and Social Innovation, "For your remarkable progress, cultural transformation, and the meaningful impact achieved in such a short time, we are honored to invite Mr. Oliver Blackwell and Ms. Lillian Cruz to receive the National Social Innovation Award." There would be a ceremony in Washington the following month, with media coverage and the presence of government officials, investors, and international organizations. Lillian's eyes widened. Oliver smiled, proud. "This is yours, Lillian. You're the one who built all of this. We built it together. But you're the one who taught me how to start." The next night, sitting on the porch at home, the two of them gazed up at the sky. "You know," Lillian said, resting her head on his shoulder, "I used to think happiness was something far away, a Sunday, a place, a dream. And now, I think it's right here." He took her hand, holding it firmly. "And this is just the beginning." From the bedroom, Leo shouted, "Are you going to come sing to me, or are you just out there being all lovey-dovey?" They laughed. "We're coming," they answered together, and they got up, ready for another ordinary night, one of those that, deep down, turns out to be the most extraordinary of all. The plane landed smoothly at Washington's airport. Outside, the sky was painted with shades of gold and blue, as if welcoming a new chapter in their story. Lillian adjusted her coat over her shoulders and looked out the window. "Can you believe that 3 months ago, you were just telling me not to be late for a gala dinner?" Oliver smiled beside her. "And now you're the star of the biggest social award in the country, and I still get nervous about interviews. Just be yourself. That's what made the world pay attention." The hotel where they stayed was elegant but understated. Lillian had turned down anything too fancy, she preferred simple comfort over excessive luxury. In the room, Leo was jumping between the beds, wearing a little tuxedo. "Can I wear this to the ceremony?" he asked excitedly. "You can," Oliver said, trying to sound serious. "Just don't wrinkle your shirt." Lillian finished putting on her lipstick and turned to both of them. "Ready?" "You look beautiful, Mommy," Leo shouted. "And you two look amazing, my two princes." The ceremony took place in an event center with a glass ceiling and floating chandeliers. Hundreds of people from all over the country were there, community leaders, business owners, educators, and journalists. When the winners of the National Social Innovation Award were announced, the names, Lillian Cruz and Oliver Blackwell, echoed through the applause. Lillian stepped onto the stage with her heart racing. Oliver, holding Leo's hand, followed her with a proud smile. "Good evening," she began, holding the microphone with slightly trembling hands. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here tonight, I would have laughed, and maybe cried, too. A few soft laughs came from the audience. This story didn't begin in a think tank or a strategy room. It began with a short message, an unexpected offer, and a CEO. She looked at Oliver with a playful smile, who was a little too bossy. More laughter. But above all, it started with a challenge, proving that social impact isn't charity. It's vision. It's smart planning. It's a real commitment to the people who build this country every single day. Oliver took the microphone for a moment. And sometimes, to start a revolution, all you really need is to listen to someone you never thought you would. After the awards ceremony, the two were invited to a live interview on the event's official channel. The host, smiling, ended with one final question, her eyes full of curiosity. "Oliver, Lillian, how did the two of you meet?" They looked at each other and burst out laughing. "That's a good one," Lillian said. "Want to start?" "Better if you tell it," Oliver replied. "I'll add the funny parts after," she said, laughing. "It all started when his assistant said he needed a new nanny and thought it would be a good idea to invite me to a gala dinner just to impress some partners. I didn't have a better option at the time." "Thanks," Oliver said, laughing. She accepted reluctantly and showed up in a red dress that stopped the whole party. "Then someone mistook me for an executive," Lillian continued. "His ex-fiancée humiliated me in public. He didn't defend me. Big mistake." "Huge," Oliver added. "But from that moment on, I really started to see her. And then he offered me a contract to pretend we were dating, for 2 months. They ended up married," the host added, smiling. "Sometimes love shows up disguised as a temporary contract," Lillian said, her eyes calm. "But what's real stays," Oliver added. The host ended with a smile, thanking them for a story that was now inspiring the whole country. That same night, in the event's ballroom, the last song began to play. Soft lights filled the space, and a string quartet played an instrumental version of "Can't Help Falling in Love." Oliver held out his hand to Lillian. "May I have this dance?" "With pleasure." The two of them danced together, smiling and exchanging gentle looks, as if time had slowed down just for that moment. Leo ran up to them, climbed onto his father's feet, and held Lillian's hand. "Can I dance with you, too?" "Can he?" Lillian asked. "This dance is yours, too, astronaut," Oliver said, wrapping him in a hug. And the three of them danced together slowly in the center of a warmly lit room, no camera flashes, no rush, no script, just them, a family. As they turned gently to the rhythm of the music, Lillian whispered, "This wasn't anything like I imagined." "Me neither," Oliver replied. "But it turned out better. Much better." Standing quietly at the entrance, watching from a distance, the same journalist from the interview jotted down one final note in her notebook: "Sometimes love shows up disguised as a temporary contract. But what's real always stays." What did you think of Lillian and Oliver's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to catch all of our stories. And be sure to check out more inspiring stories by clicking here.